go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Irene Drake. I'm here at Anna H. Rockwell School in Bethel, Connecticut. I'm a teacher of grade 3. I taught a mathematics lesson, particularly division, our introduction lesson to division.
And then I'll keep track of time. Okay, so we want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before the lesson and what will come after it?
Okay. The lesson that was taught this morning was an introduction to division using concepts from multiplication lessons taught in prior lessons to help basically master the concept of unknown factor, size of groups, and fair share. The students have already completed 2 units on multiplication, which included lessons on finding the unknown factors in multiplication problems, They've also created many arrays for different types of problems. They've learned how to solve multiplication problems using a variety of strategies that included arrays, distributive of property, repeated addition. So the next lesson after mastery of this concept will be introducing students to division, where the unknown factor represents the number of groups now, not the size. So the following lesson after that is going to be using the array model to demonstrate division. So that's where we're going in terms of the next sequence of lessons after this one.
Okay, great. Talk about the standards or cluster targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard or cluster?
Okay. The cluster for our lesson was basically the operations and algebraic thinking, because that is a major cluster in grade 3. Particularly, I focused on standard A1 and A2 as well as A6, which was the unknown factor problem, interpreting whole number quotients of whole numbers, like 56 divided by 8, things of that nature. And basically how I planned for it, I looked at the instructional guides that we were given in our own curriculum guide, and I tried to match it based on where the needs were and where we were in our year and what I knew 2nd grade had done. And I also based it on where I knew 4th grade needed us to be. So that's kind of how I decided what lesson was appropriate and what cluster I needed to focus on. And the majority of our year will be spent in operations and algebraic thinking because of that. So it was a natural fit to pick that cluster.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplified, and how did you plan for this?
As I'm thinking, when I planned for it, I thought it had different components and not as many as I first thought. But when I'm thinking about it, I believe it has all of core action 1, because it does meet all the standards. It fit everything in terms of the Common Core. The students, they were able to complete some practice. They were able to, do everything they needed to do to get them towards understanding the concept. I guess my one concern was whether they truly understand it, and we'll talk about that probably later. I felt core action 2A and 2C. They were able to use manipulatives. They had a PowerPoint as a visual. 2E, was also in there. 3D, they were definitely able to use math terms. They used division. A lot of them used unknown factor. They used arrays very well. They knew their math terms, which was good, and they were using them, so I was pleased with that. The other thing, they were talking to each other, which I liked. They had opportunities to discuss with each other. They had opportunities to discuss what they were thinking, and that was also another core action that I'm sorry, you might have to stop for a moment on that one.
Okay.
But I don't know if I put that down in my notes.
Do you want me to pause for a
Can you
minute?
pause for a moment on that?
Okay, and we're recording.
Okay. So another core action that I thought the lesson exemplified was 3B. The children did have ample opportunities to explain their own thinking, and even some students were able to help others explain their thinking. They were able to talk to each other. And basically, again, how I planned for it, I matched my lesson with the Common Core instructional practice guides from the Helmsley Project as well, to basically make sure that my lesson had those components in there. And again, having these practice guides made me more aware and making sure that I do that. So that was very helpful.
We're interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your classroom. Discuss how the lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay. There are 3 shifts, obviously, in the mathematics realm. Focus is a big one, basically where that all our standards have to be fully aligned with grade 3 to the Common Core standards that is set for our grade level. And I do feel that this lesson is fully aligned with the 3 standards that I stated in the beginning of our interview and in my lesson plan. This lesson is fully aligned with those 3 standards. So in that respect, there is focus. So the shifts were met there. There is a coherence shift because I felt that the lesson linked multiplication, where it does start a little bit in multiplication with 2nd grade when they start talking about equal groups, to where we get really into multiplication deeply in 3rd grade, into now division, and where that will carry them through to when they get deeper into division in 4th grade. So that would be their coherence piece where we met that shift in this lesson. The rigor lesson came in because I felt I incorporated both a fluency portion with my math sprints, with the math sprint that we completed, as well as the conceptual understanding was the lesson. The lesson was the concept of division, how they get the concept. So I felt that was met that way. And, I was trying to go from abstract to pictorial or concrete using counters to pictures, and then trying to get back to a pictorial representation. And I think that's where I ran out of time, because that was going to be my final piece, and that was where I think I ran out of time. But the lesson in itself, when I do finish, will be going from the abstract to a pictorial, which will help with the rigor and the conceptual understanding piece of it.
Good, you're doing great. How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What's the same and what's different?
Prior to it, like I think I said before, I never had these guides really to refer to. Yes, would I have used manipulatives? Absolutely. Would I have done that fluency piece in the beginning? No. Fluency I always use as a separate added piece as extra center work, or please do it for homework, I don't have time for it. I now incorporate it more into the lesson. I add it more. I make sure there's time for it. So that was a change. I definitely still would have used manipulative, so that's where it would be the same. Also I think that I do always believe in having them draw pictures and showing ways, talking to each other. But I think where I've shifted a little bit more is that they're doing more of the work than me. I tended to be more of the teacher working harder than the students in terms of me giving the instruction. Now the students are now talking to each other and trying to help each other more. So I think that's where it's changed.
Student engagement is crucial to the work of a CCSS. We want to ensure how we want to understand how you ensure that all students have the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. How did the students handle this lesson? Did they understand the mathematics, and how do you know?
Okay. I think overall, I would say most got the lesson. There are a few that still struggle, and I think as I was looking through some of the work that I brought, they're going to need more help, more one-on-one support, and I think they get it. I knew because the problem set that we did, when they have a picture in front of them, they get it very easily. When they had to go from them creating the math fact without the picture, or them having to draw the picture, that's where they did not get the concept. When they had to come up with, well, if you have 20 items, you have 5 buckets, how are you going to divide it? That's where I think we have more work to do. So overall, I would say the majority, yes, maybe 95, 96% of the children got it. And I know that based on the problem set that they completed it. I think there is still a percentage that we still have more work to do, which we will do in small group.
Explain how you differentiated in this lesson. Did all students have the opportunity to work on grade level content? If all students did not have this opportunity, explain why.
Okay. In this lesson, I had everyone working on grade level content, even though I do have several that are working below grade level in math and who struggle a lot. They all did pretty much the same thing. Where I differentiated was there were a few friends that really do struggle. They were pulled in small groups, whether it was with myself or the other teacher, Mrs. Anastasia, in the room. So that's where they got the extra support, the little one-on-one, more manipulatives. They also had the choice whether to use manipulatives or not. So the ones who were higher, they had the choice whether or not to use them, and they chose not to. The ones that were lower, they worked with a teacher and they used manipulatives. They really didn't have much of a choice, and that was based on the teacher's discretion. I had 2 higher children who finished pretty much within minutes, seconds almost. They actually were offered the opportunity to go off on an iPad and create opportunities for students who may be still struggling with this concept, their own interpretation of it on an educreation. And they like that, and they're very good at it, and that's a way to differentiate for them to really make sure they're getting the concept, and it's also enriching for them.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify? And what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
I'm sorry, I gotta probably look at my notes for
Sure.
a second, sorry. Or look at.
Go ahead.
Okay. I feel in this lesson, the student behaviors that I noticed most of the time. I didn't really notice a lot of frustration, so it's hard for me to say that one, but the students were using the appropriate tools strategically when they were solving the problem. When they felt they needed to use the manipulatives, they did. They used them appropriately. They even used them when they didn't need to use, like when they had a choice whether or not to use them, or when I said use whatever strategy you wanted, they chose to use them. And I felt like me giving them the choice, you know, the comfort level in the room, knowing that they were fine to do it any way they wanted, having the freedom to do that, allowed them to make the choice that was comfortable for them. The other student behavior that I noticed was that the students took risks. They were able to try it. Some of them were wrong. They revised it with some help, and they explained it. They justified some of their mistakes. I noticed that a couple times in the beginning of the lesson. And they went back and fixed it. And they were able to kind of get why they made the mistake, and then went back and fixed it. And they kind of talked to each other about that, why, and they kind of piggybacked off each other. I noticed a couple times of, oh, that's not right. Why did you do that? So again, I think it's more of me allowing that and being comfortable and kind of giving them practice doing that. And I think they felt very comfortable asking that and shouting out and saying, why, that's not right. Why are you doing that? And no one felt threatened. And I think it's just overall culture in the room that I've created together with them that made them feel comfortable to do that.
I'm going to skip the submitted work. Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. Reflecting on the lesson, what worked well and what might you do differently?
When I thought about it, part of, I think, what went well was that the use of the manipulatives, the use of real world examples, using teachers that the kids know, being able to have them talk to each other, that particularly worked well. Having them kind of share their thinking with one another, having them share out to us, to everybody, and kind of show what they knew was positive and definitely demonstrated higher learning. The area where I probably would improve upon here, it was longer than I expected, and I didn't get to everything that I wanted to. It's supposed to be an hour lesson. I think I probably needed another 20 more minutes to finish, so I probably should have done a few things differently, or maybe, thought about how to change things up or move it a little bit in a different direction. So, the other thing I thought that was positive, the closing, I thought was, it did show some understanding of what I wanted, even though the closing wasn't the original closing I had planned. I actually switched it up last minute in the fly. So, those are the things that happened based on the needs of the students and kind of where it went. I would have, like I said, I think I needed a little more time. I would have liked to have more time to have them practice a little more with some of the harder problems, not so much the picture problems, but ones for them to write the problems themselves based on creating it and then writing it. So I think those are things to work on with the next lesson when I do this again.
And last question, were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
Surprisingly, I do have a very animated group. The only surprise I think I had was the one student who kind of almost said my lesson before I said it. He almost like really pretty much knew what we were going for before we went for the lesson. So he was pretty much with the right terminology, had the great vocabulary about division. So that was surprising because that's typically not like him. And he just popped that out all of a sudden, so which was a nice surprise. You know, the behavior overall was very good, so I was very pleased. There was nothing out of the ordinary either way. So overall, it was what I expected.
Okay. And you did say you worked them today.
Oh, no, I definitely worked them hard. I mean, our normal math time should be an hour. That was probably a little over an hour, I'd have to say. It was definitely, so it was definitely different in terms of timing. We usually go to special at 10:05, so I guess that was not unexpected. They knew it was coming, but it was still, they worked hard, and you could tell they were, and they did it. So that was definitely a nice positive surprise because, like I said, my group is they're wonderful, they're animated, but they come with nice challenges too.
Great. No, they were really